Hello YouTube, welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben and I'm here on our off-grid property in the mountains of Virginia. Behind me, I have a few big milestones for our project here on our solar shed. I have a Mr.Cool mini split to cool the inside of this shed for the summer. It'll also work for heat in the winter. I also have this 50 amp connector that powers our camper. So if you want to see how I installed this, please stick around and I'll be right back. Thanks. You got the broccoli dance? Oh, the broccoli boy! I'm out here in the utility room, and on the other side of this wall, I plan to put two 50 amp receptacles. I assume that's the name for them. One of them is going to be an input and one of them is going to be an output. The output will allow us to plug any camper either with or without an adapter into a 50 amp plug to power the camper. The other one is going to be backwards. So I can plug the generator into it and then it'll feed into this wire which goes to the charge diverter. That can top off the batteries without having to leave this door open and pass the cord through the door. So one thing I need to do is kill the power to this panel just to make it safe to work on. I need to remove a knockout and see if I can get a piece of conduit to go through this piece of zip board through the wall, and then I can fish wires up and down, at least in this one stud bay, and drill a hole wherever I need to on the other side to mount the boxes. So let's get started. As usual, anytime I'm working in or around the breaker panel, I completely isolate and disconnect all of the solar components. That way there's no risk of being energized and shocking me. After installing the conduit, I then proceeded to cut a hole through the siding panels outside the building. I just put the scrap of wire through the hole here, fished it through and out the other side. I'm essentially using this as a fish tape. I've pretty securely wrapped a bunch of thick gauge wire to it. Now I'm going to try to pull the whole thing through the wall. This process was a bit tedious because the bundle of wire essentially has to make two 90-degree turns. One where the conduit enters the wall, and then one where it turns again to come out through this hole that I recently drilled. At least the wires are in the same stud bay, but I don't think the holes being so close together makes it any easier to pull. decided we wanted a plug receptacle next to the front door of the solar shed. To reduce the amount of effort and to reduce the amount of cuts we would have to make in the wall, I decided to mount this just on the other side from an existing receptacle. That way I only needed about 1 foot of wire, which I got from my scrap pile. Let's take a short break from this build series. I'm using this project as a rehearsal for our permanent house. That's why I'm keeping the construction as similar as I can to our house design. But you could build a structure that looks just like this way quicker. If you're intrigued, you should look into steel buildings. That leads me to the sponsor of this video, SBSI. The acronym stands for Steel Buildings and Structures, and they design and supply materials for tubular framed buildings. Their products use structural steel tubing and panels instead of wood for support. This allows them to achieve impressive spans up to 60 feet in width and even 20 feet tall. They offer a variety of designs to meet your needs, and in 17 colors too. SBSI is a local company just across the state line from us in Mount Airy, North Carolina, and they deliver and install throughout the southeastern U.S. Check out their product list and gallery if you're looking for inspiration for your next building, and review their frequently asked questions and blogs to get familiar with their features. You should have some fun with their web-based 3D building designer while you're there, and don't hesitate to contact them if you simply want to talk to an expert. As I'm recording this segment, SBSI is offering discounts for their July 4th sale, so keep an eye out for sales throughout the year, and I'll put a link to their website down in the description below. Now back to the video. So you can see here, I'm finally unboxing the inside head unit for my Mr.Cool mini split heat pump. You should go back a few episodes if you want to see how I installed the outside condenser unit. I used a wall mount to attach that to the outside of the solar shed, and I went ahead and installed a shutoff box, which is required by code to safely disable the electricity when servicing the unit. So behind me is the most finished wall in this living room area. And the reason why this area is more finished than the rest is because this is where the inside unit for our Mr.Cool mini split is going to be. Obviously, it can't be right there at the window, but I was just looking through the manual to find the minimum clearances. It says from the ceiling, it needs a minimum clearance of 5.9 inches. I'm going to round that up to 6 inches and draw a level line across just so I can start visualizing where this is going to go. So let me start that right now. All right, there's a level line. I do want to double check this with my laser. That's perfect. Now let me show you the template that the mini split came with. This is a scale drawing of the mounting plate that needs to be installed for the mini split. You can see there's several holes for screws to go through. I assume that's just to account for variations in studs. I'm assuming these are for 16-inch stud spacing. Let me check that real quick. Well, I can't really figure out what these long ones are for. But this little dot here for a screw is exactly 16 inches to that one. So I might want to center it between studs like that. But then this is the hole that I'm going to have to cut out. So I have a few different criteria. One, obviously, I do not want a stud to fall where that hole needs to be. But also, I want to make sure, since I have metal siding, vertical siding specifically, is that where the hole is does not fall on one of those corrugated raised ribs. I want it to fall in the flat so it's easier to cut and easier to seal. So I'm going to try to figure that out now before I start drilling and permanently modifying my structure. So real quick off camera, I traced the center of each stud. There's 3 studs here that are relevant to the location where this needs to sit. I also put another horizontal line at the bottom of the cardboard in case I can't see the top line once this cardboard is up. So these don't necessarily represent the top and the bottom of the mini split, but they do represent the top and the bottom of the template, at least for purposes of finding out where this hole needs to go. So I got out this old nail that I've had lying around, and I'm going to push it through to locate where the center of this hole is going to be. And then I'm going to try to transfer that measurement to the outside to see if it's located on the flat of my metal siding or on the rib. So there's the spot. I'm going to do this measurement off camera because I don't know how well it's going to work, and I don't feel like moving the camera out in the hot sun. Basically, I'm going to try to find a specific location on the glass. Maybe I'll put a piece of painter's tape on there so I can measure from the tape to this hole, go outside and do the same thing. So I just transferred the measurement, and the good news is it falls pretty evenly in the center between two ribs. So this is a good spot for the hole. I don't need to modify anything, but I do need to figure out how to drill a hole cleanly through the metal. The drywall is not too difficult. There's a number of tools I can use to do that, including this adjustable cutting tool that you've seen me use on PVC and plastic in the past. It's meant to cut circular holes into drywall to put your LED can lights in and things like that. So I'll probably use that on the inside, but I'm gonna have to read the manual, figure out what they recommend, and then try to move forward. Here's a demonstration of that tool I was speaking of. I adjusted this to 3.5 inches. This says 3.54. It relies on the pilot bit, which is much longer than the blades, to be centered, which is why I shoved the nail through there, because now I can shove the pilot bit through that, rev it up, and it'll start cutting straight through exactly. Mr. Cool was nice enough to include this sleeve However, it was kind of crushed in half and it was split lengthwise into multiple pieces. So I had to tape it back together with zip tape. I probably would have wrapped it with zip anyway, just because it's a nice waterproof tape. But I also used scissors to cut this to length. I put it through the wall, marked it with a Sharpie, took it back out and cut it. So now this should be the final installation. There it is. One of the last steps before we install the mini split is to prime this area. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary, but I do like the idea of having the drywall sealed behind the mini split, especially because it does have some dehumidification capabilities where it removes moisture and pumps it through to the outside. And with that exchange of moisture, I'm worried about unsealed drywall. So I'm going to prime this now. I've repurposed an old yogurt cup to scoop a small amount of primer into my tray because I don't want to overpour and waste any primer. All I need to do is prime this little like 4 foot by 4 foot square along with a little strip on the ceiling. And I'm only doing this to try to prevent a mess when I actually go to prime the rest of the room. I don't want to drip paint on the mini split, and I have a feeling I need to keep the mini split running for the rest of the summer, even while I work in this room. I got this primed just over an hour ago, and it's pretty much dry to the touch. I went ahead and cut the circle out because I wanted to double check. That's where it's going to go. If you recall, I shoved a nail through that hole. That's the hole I was planning to use to mount it. And I can still see the little divot up there. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and shove a screw through the actual hole in the bracket, pivot it upon that screw, and see if I can get it level. Well, that's not going anywhere. I used my 3-inch long decking screws that I use for general carpentry, and I really like them because they have that star-shaped bit. There's relatively no chance of stripping the screw head. So I've been able to reuse these screws throughout this project. A lot of them were recycled from my concrete forms. I did draw circles around the holes that I was supposed to use because I measured 16 inches. That's how I remembered, because there's probably 100 holes or so in that bracket. So now that this is up there, I can kind of visualize where the mini split's going to go. And because of the template, let me show you. We know exactly where the line set is going to go. Have some bubble wrap in there for the night so no birds show up. And I think this is it until tomorrow. All right, the manual says to pull the line set out facing 90 degrees from the unit. That way you can push everything straight through that sleeve in the wall. Anyway, there's several things here, and to bundle them together, the manual says to use electrical tape. So I have this big thing. I'm gonna grab a knife and cut that open. That's the electrical control wire. This is the incoming and outgoing line set bundled together. And finally, there's the condensation line. According to the manual, the condensate line must be at the bottom. Okay, I did 3 wraps. The first one being right where it goes into the wall. Second one in the middle, and then the third one, I wrapped the end of all of these different things. So hopefully, this should be able to slide through without issues. I'm pretty sure all the line set and control wire is at least 20 feet long. So I left the mini split head unit where it is, over by the door. And I'm just kind of uncoiling this. I might as well feed this through the hole. I'll probably go coil it up outside so it doesn't get in the mud. All of that before I actually pick this up, carry it over here. Alright, that's going to take some finagling, so I'll figure that out off camera, and then I'm going to go start wrapping this stuff outside while I connect the line set. I'm going to remove the electrical tape bundles that I did so I can gradually turn the line set down, and then I'm going to attach the condensate line and the permanent line set, just hand tightened, just to make sure everything is good to go before I do the permanent tightening and wrapping of the line set. It's time for the big reveal. Behind me is the mini split. I stuck the Energy Star certification label on there just in case the inspectors wanted to see that. Let's turn this on. Have it set to 75. That's the default, I guess. Let's try eco mode. I don't know exactly what eco mode does. I need to read it in the manual. It sounds good, and since we're running on batteries, maybe it's like a power saving option, but it's definitely cool. It did come with a Wi-Fi dongle. Our Wi-Fi is coming. I've ordered Starlink, so if you want to see how we set that up, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you next time here on Kind Heart Homestead.